The evening started softly. Salira Mondane wanted this night to feel special. She had spent the whole day cooking Haven Droswick's favorite dishes, hoping that tonight would be the night peace finally came between the two families. The dining table was warm and inviting, candles flickered, and the smell of roasted herbs filled the house. Salira held baby Lorvin Kael'thas close to her chest as she moved between the kitchen and dining room. He was barely 3 months old, small, warm, and always smiling at her. Every time she looked at him, her heart filled with love. She wanted him to grow up in a home where everyone loved him too. Tavrik Renler, her husband, noticed her nervousness and smiled. "Relax, Salira," he said softly. "Tonight will go well. My father will see Lorvin and understand." Salira nodded, but deep down she wasn't sure. Mr. Haven Droswick had been distant ever since Lorvin's birth. He never came to visit, not even once. Tonight was the first time he would see the baby, and Salira hoped it would finally melt his cold heart. The guests arrived. Mr. Korik Vainar, Salira's father, entered quietly and greeted everyone with his usual gentle smile. He was a man of few words, but always gave Salira courage with just his presence. Then came Haven Droswick, tall, stern, and carrying the weight of pride on his shoulders. He barely looked at Salira as he walked in. They all sat down. The first few minutes were calm. The clinking of cutlery, the sound of conversation, Tavrik trying to keep everyone talking about safe topics. Salira gently placed Lorvin in his little seat next to her. The baby giggled, reaching his tiny hands out, and Salira thought maybe, just maybe, tonight would be the start of healing. Then it happened. Haven stared at the baby, his brows furrowing deeper and deeper. The light chatter died down as everyone noticed his silence. Suddenly, he slammed his hand down on the table. The plates rattled, and Lorvin flinched at the sound, letting out a soft cry. "This baby is a mistake," Haven shouted. The room froze. Salira's heart felt like it had been struck. She stared at him in shock, her hands automatically reaching to lift Lorvin out of his seat. "What are you saying?" Tavrik's voice was low, almost shaking. "You heard me," Haven said, his voice sharp. "I know the dates, Tavrik. This baby came too soon. This is not your child." Salira gasped. Tears burned in her eyes as she hugged Lorvin tightly against her chest, shielding him as if words could hurt him physically. She looked at Tavrik, but he seemed frozen, as if his world had been knocked off balance. Korik Vainar's expression darkened, but he stayed silent, watching carefully. Salira's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stand. "I will not stay here," she said in a trembling voice. "Not in this house. Not with these words." She turned and walked away, Lorvin crying softly in her arms. She didn't wait for Tavrik to stop her. She went straight to the bedroom, her tears falling freely now. She laid Lorvin gently on the bed and began pulling clothes out of the closet with shaking hands. Behind her, Tavrik entered the room. "Salira, wait," he said softly, his voice breaking. "Please don't do this. Don't leave like this." Salira turned to face him, her cheeks wet with tears. "How can I stay?" she asked. "He called my baby a mistake, Tavrik. He called me a liar. How can I raise Lorvin in this house where he will be treated like he doesn't belong?" Tavrik ran his hands through his hair, torn between his wife and his father. "I know what he said was wrong, but just give me time. I'll make him understand." Salira shook her head. "No. Tonight was supposed to be about love and family. And instead, he humiliated me, in front of everyone. I will not sit at that table again." Outside the door, Haven's voice echoed down the hallway. "Tavrik, bring your wife back here. She will answer me tonight." Salira's heart pounded harder. She picked up Lorvin, holding him close. Her hands were trembling, but her decision felt solid. She would leave if she had to, anything to protect her son from this pain. The house was no longer warm. The candles still burned, but they felt like they were lighting a battlefield. The dinner that was supposed to bring the family together had just torn it apart. Salira Mondane's hands trembled as she pushed clothes into the suitcase. Each fold was clumsy, rushed, her tears falling onto the fabric. Baby Lorvin Kael'thas lay on the bed, kicking lightly, his big eyes watching his mother with innocent confusion. He didn't understand the storm around him. Her chest hurt. She kept hearing the words again and again. "This baby is a mistake." The cruelty of it cut deeper than she could bear. It wasn't just an insult. It was a wound on her child's name, on her motherhood, on her family's dignity. Tavrik Renler stood by the door, torn apart. His heart raced as he watched his wife. He had never seen her this broken, and it shook him more than his father's words ever could. "Salira," Tavrik said, his voice breaking. "Please don't leave. Don't do this. My father, he doesn't know what he's saying. He's stubborn, but he'll calm down." Salira turned, her eyes red, her hands clutching Lorvin's tiny clothes. "Calm down," she whispered bitterly. "He looked at my son, Tavrik. Our son. And he called him a mistake. Tell me, how does a man take back words like that?" Tavrik had no answer. His silence spoke louder than anything. Salira zipped the suitcase halfway. "I can't stay here. If I stay, I will always hear those words in this house. Every corner will remind me of how he doubted me, how he doubted Lorvin. I won't raise my child under that shadow." Before Tavrik could reply, a loud knock shook the bedroom door. Then came the voice, harsh, commanding, unyielding. "Open this door, Tavrik." Havan Droswick's voice thundered through the wood. "I won't be ignored in my own house." Salira froze. Lorvin whimpered at the loud noise, his tiny hands curling into fists as if even he could sense the tension. Tavrik looked at the door, then at his wife. "Don't open it," Salira whispered. "Please." The knocking grew louder. "Tavrik, bring your wife out here. She owes me an answer." Salira held Lorvin tighter, pressing his small head against her chest, trying to shield him from the ugliness outside. "See," she said, her voice trembling. "This is why I can't stay. He doesn't see me as family. He sees me as a woman he can command, insult, and throw out. And you," her voice cracked, "you're too afraid to stop him." Tavrik's jaw clenched. He felt the weight of her words crush him. She was right. For years, he had lived under his father's shadow, never daring to stand against him. But now that silence was destroying the one person he loved most. "Salira," Tavrik stepped closer, his hand brushing her arm. "I don't want to lose you. Please, just give me one chance. I'll talk to him." Salira shook her head, tears spilling again. One chance. Tonight was his chance. Tonight was the night he could have shown us love, and instead he chose hate. The suitcase lay open on the floor, clothes spilling out like a broken heart. Lorvin whimpered again, and Salira kissed his forehead, whispering, "Don't worry, my son. Mama will protect you." Then the door handle rattled. Havan was trying to push it open. "If you don't come out, I will come in," he barked. Tavrik's heart pounded. He couldn't let his father storm in and shatter Salira even more. He quickly turned the lock and stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him before Havan could barge in. "What are you doing?" Havan demanded, his face red with rage. "Father, stop this," Tavrik said firmly, though his voice still shook. "This isn't the way." "The way?" Havan scoffed. "The way is truth. That woman has disrespected our family. That child. Don't," Tavrik snapped louder this time. "Don't you dare say another word about my son." The hallway went silent. For the first time, Havan blinked in surprise. His son had never raised his voice at him before. Inside the bedroom, Salira could hear every word. She stood frozen, clutching Lorvin, waiting to see what Tavrik would do. Havan's tone dropped, but his pride remained sharp. "So you choose her over your blood? Over your own father?" Tavrik's voice wavered but didn't break. "No, father. I'm choosing what's right. And if you can't accept that, then maybe you're the one breaking this family, not her." For a moment, Havan's face hardened. His lips trembled with rage, but his eyes darted toward the dining table, where Korik Vaynar still sat in silence. Korik's calm gaze was fixed on him, steady, unblinking, like a man waiting for the right moment. Havan straightened his coat, huffed angrily, and pointed a finger at Tavrik. "You'll regret this," he spat, before storming back toward the dining room. Tavrik closed his eyes, his chest heavy. He turned back into the bedroom, where Salira was standing near the bed, Lorvin in her arms, the half-packed suitcase at her feet. "What happened?" she whispered. "He's gone back to the table," Tavrik said, exhausted. "But he won't stop. Not tonight." Salira lowered her gaze. "Then we leave tonight. Before he says something we can never forgive." Tavrik felt his stomach twist. He didn't want to lose her, but he didn't know how to fight the man who had ruled his life for so long. As silence wrapped the room, another sound cut through. The slow, steady footsteps of Korik Vaynar rising from his chair. The man who had been silent all evening was finally moving, his shadow stretching across the hallway. Salira and Tavrik looked at each other, their hearts pounding. Whatever happened next, they knew the night was far from over. The house was quiet, except for the sound of footsteps. Korik Vaynar, Salira's father, slowly walked from the dining table toward the hallway. He carried no anger in his face, no fire in his voice. yet the weight of his presence made the air heavy. Haven Droswick stood near the living room, his chest still heaving from his argument with Tavrik. He turned as Cork approached. "And what do you want?" Haven said coldly. "This is not your house. Stay out of it." Cork's eyes narrowed slightly. "It is not my house, Haven," he said calmly. "But it is my daughter's dignity you've destroyed tonight. And for that, I will not stay silent." The words were soft, but they cut through the room sharper than any shout. Tavrik, standing by the bedroom door, looked at Cork in shock. He had rarely seen the older man speak with such weight. Salira, clutching baby Lorvin inside the room, leaned closer to the door, listening with her heart pounding. Haven scoffed. "Dignity? She brought this on herself. She came into my family, and she brought shame. That child." "Enough." Cork's voice, though quiet, was so firm it silenced Haven instantly. For the first time that evening, Haven faltered. Cork stepped closer, his calm eyes never leaving Haven's. "You stand there and call my grandson a mistake. You accuse my daughter of betrayal. But before you say another word, perhaps you should remember who saved you from losing everything." Haven blinked. His face stiffened. "What are you talking about?" Cork tilted his head slightly. "Do you think I didn't know? Do you think secrets stay buried forever?" He paused, his voice steady but heavy with truth. 5 years ago, when your business collapsed under debt, when the bank was ready to drag your name into the streets, who do you think paid to keep you afloat?" The room fell into a stunned silence. Tavrik's eyes widened. "What?" he whispered. Salira gasped from inside the bedroom. She had never heard this before. Haven's face turned pale. His lips parted, but no words came out. He looked away, as if Cork's gaze alone was too much to bear. "Yes, Haven," Cork continued, his voice like a blade. "It was me. I paid your debt. I saved your reputation. And I did it quietly, without ever asking for thanks. I did it for Tavrik, so he wouldn't live with shame. I did it for this family because I believed that one day you would respect my daughter and give her a place in your home." Cork's voice grew heavier, sharper. "But instead, you used my silence to feed your pride. And tonight, you dared to insult the very child who carries my blood." Haven swallowed hard, his hands curling into fists, but his face betrayed his fear. The room that had once been his domain now felt like a prison. Tavrik stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Is this true, father? Did he save you?" Haven said nothing. His silence was the loudest answer of all. Tavrik's shoulders dropped, disbelief in his eyes. All his life, he had thought his father's pride was unshakable. But now he saw the truth. It was built on a foundation of someone else's sacrifice. Salira opened the bedroom door slowly. She stepped into the hallway, Lorvin in her arms, her eyes locked on Haven. She didn't need to speak. The look on her face said it all: pain, betrayal, but also strength. Cork turned to her, his expression softening. "Daughter," he said gently, "you don't need to leave. Not anymore." Haven finally spoke, but his voice was weak. You had no right to bring that up." Cork's eyes turned cold again. "I had every right. You crossed the line first. If you ever speak against my daughter or my grandson again, I will tell the entire city exactly how you survived your downfall. And then, Haven, it won't be my family living in shame. It will be yours." The words landed like thunder. Haven's face went completely pale. His pride, his control, his arrogance, all of it crumbled in a single moment. Salira tightened her hold on Lorvin. For the first time that evening, she felt safe. Not because Haven had changed, but because someone had finally stood for her, stronger than Haven could ever pretend to be. Tavrik placed his hand on her shoulder. His voice was quiet, but firm. "We're not leaving, Salira. Not anymore. Not like this." Haven looked at them, his mouth opening as if to argue, but no words came. He turned away, lowering himself back into his chair at the dining table. The proud man who had once ruled the family with his voice now sat silent, defeated. The house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence that comes when the balance of power has finally shifted. Salira brushed her lips against Lorvin's forehead, whispering, "You're not a mistake, my love. You are everything." And as Cork returned to his seat, the words he had spoken hung in the air like a scar Haven would never forget. The dining room was heavy with silence. The candles still flickered on the table, but their light seemed colder now, casting long shadows across the walls. The plates of food sat untouched, the aroma wasted. No one lifted a fork. No one dared to speak. Haven Droswick sat in his chair, shoulders hunched, his face pale. The man who had always spoken with authority now looked small, as if the truth Corric Vaynar had spoken had stripped away every layer of his pride. His fingers tapped nervously against the wooden armrest, but his eyes never met anyone else's. Tavrik Renler stood near Salira, one arm gently around her shoulders. For the first time in years, he felt the courage to stand tall beside her. His loyalty had always been divided, but tonight something had changed. His father's silence had shown him that the man he once saw as unbreakable was just another human, flawed, weak, and indebted. Salira Mondain sat with Lorvin Kael'thas in her arms. Her eyes were still red from crying, but she no longer looked afraid. Instead, there was strength in her gaze, the strength of a woman who had endured humiliation yet refused to be broken. She gently rocked Lorvin, whispering words only he could hear. "You are loved. You are mine." Corric Vaynar returned to his seat slowly. He didn't need to say more. His one revelation had already shifted the ground beneath everyone's feet. He simply sat quietly, his calm expression daring anyone to challenge him again. Finally, Tavrik broke the silence. His voice was steady, though a little strained. "Father," he said, looking directly at Haven, "you owe my wife an apology, and you owe my son respect. He is your grandson, whether you like it or not." Haven's jaw tightened. His pride screamed at him not to bow, not to admit defeat. For years, he had commanded obedience with just his words. To apologize now would feel like surrender. But the memory of Corric's warning lingered in his mind. The threat to reveal his secret debt to everyone. He knew Corric meant every word. If that truth became public, Haven's reputation would be destroyed. Slowly, Haven exhaled. His voice was low, almost forced. "Salira, I spoke out of anger. I should not have said those words." Salira looked at him, her arms tightening around Lorvin. The apology felt hollow, empty of warmth, but it was still more than she had ever expected. "It wasn't just anger," she replied quietly. "It was cruelty, and cruelty leaves scars." Haven lowered his eyes, unable to answer. Tavrik spoke again, his tone firm. "If you want this family to stay together, you will never insult my wife or my son again. Because if you do, father, I will walk out of this house and never return." The words shocked even Salira. She looked at her husband, her eyes wide. For the first time, Tavrik had chosen her over his father without hesitation. Haven's hands trembled slightly. He glanced at Tavrik, then at Salira, then at Corric, and finally gave a small nod. "It won't happen again," he muttered. The room went still. The proud man had bent, even if only a little. It was not the apology Salira's heart longed for, but it was a promise she could live with, for now. Salira leaned her head against Tavrik's shoulder, exhaustion washing over her. She had been ready to leave this house forever, to carry her son away from the pain, but now things felt different. Not healed, not whole, but different. For once, she wasn't alone. As the night wore on, the family remained quiet. No one touched the food. Eventually, Salira stood up, carrying Lorvin to the bedroom. She wanted him to sleep peacefully, far from the bitterness of the dining table. Tavrik followed her a few minutes later. He found her sitting on the edge of the bed, gently stroking Lorvin's tiny hand as he slept. "Are you okay?" Tavrik asked softly. Salira looked up at him. "No," she admitted honestly. "But I will be. Because tonight, you finally stood with me. That means more than anything." Tavrik knelt in front of her, taking her free hand. "I should have done it long ago. I let father control me for too many years. But I won't let him hurt you again. I promise." Salira's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not from pain. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. "Then maybe we can stay. Not for your father, but for us." "For Lorvin." Tavrik nodded. "For us." In the other room, Haven sat alone at the table. The candle flames danced across his face, revealing the cracks in his pride. He had lost something tonight, control. And he knew it. For the first time, he felt the weight of his mistakes pressing down on him. And Corric, sitting silently across from him, gave him one last look, a look that promised he would always be watching. Then he rose, put on his coat, and left the house without a word. The night ended in silence. Not the silence of fear or anger, but the silence that follows a storm. Heavy, tense, yet strangely peaceful. Salira closed her eyes beside her son, her husband's hand still holding hers. She knew the scars would remain, but she also knew one thing with certainty. Lorvin would grow up loved, no matter how much pride tried to stand in the way. The dinner that had started as a gathering had ended as a battlefield. And though the wounds were fresh, Salira had survived it. She had found her strength. And Haven Droswick, once untouchable, would never forget the night his pride was broken by a single sentence.